what I was going to say is, what if you are okay with writing a book? You're just thinking about actually putting something out there. You have maybe already been writing on your blog or somewhere public for a little bit already, so you're good to go to write something big, right? So would you say that is it hard to decide what tone or what language you would use in this book, because it might be slightly different to just writing conversationally on a blog, or maybe even in a video or something like that? So you want to keep your voice, but you want to sound more, more proper. Is it okay to sound conversational, or is it really important to be more formal in a book?
That's a really great question, because I think people are really used to books being quite formal, and that is certainly changing. I've definitely edited a lot of books where the person's voice has been really strong and come across really well. So when you make that leap from having done a bit of writing for, probably for the web, maybe a bit for your clients around what you do, but certainly you'll have done probably some web copy or some blogging or something like that, and you want to make that leap into a bigger book, I would not suggest changing it up too much. In fact, some people even make a book from their blog. The difference is, obviously you've got to take into consideration the best structure and the best way of people digesting the information on a bigger scale. So that's all in the planning, and that actually kind of comes before the bit that I do, which is the language and the copy editing. But as far as sounding conversational is concerned, you can totally do that. And the important thing is to keep your audience engaged. So that means once you've planned the way that the information is going to be presented and what order you're going to present it in, knowing exactly who it's for, that's going to be reading, and making sure that you're speaking directly to them. So figuring out what kind of thing they like. So conversational style may not work for certain audiences, but if you've already been using it, then presumably it would be working for your audience, and so you should keep it. So you should always be consistent throughout your different pieces of communication that you're putting out there. Now, of course, different pieces of communication have got different purposes. So an email that might be keeping people in touch with what you're up to, like say a newsletter, may be different if it's giving some information or cool content that's free, as to if you're trying to sell. Because the purpose of an email that's being sent out that's delivering free content to people is to help them get to know you and help them figure out, how you can help them and get them to trust you and all those sorts of things. Whereas something that is selling, the purpose is very different. So the techniques that you use to write are slightly different in that sense, but the voice should always remain the same, and the style more or less the same, with a few tweaks depending on what that purpose is. Like you'd use more persuasive language and more calls to action if you were selling something, but if you were presenting information, you'd want it to be engaging in a really different way. So you might use more, say, statistics or hooks that involve re-engaging the audience over and over again. So things like questions and storytelling and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's lots and lots of different things going on, but the short answer is yes, you can be conversational in a book. You really have to think about the audience, and you really have to think about the purpose of what you're delivering.
Yeah, sounds great. And I think that is exactly the point where it is great to have an editor, I would say, because when you start making something like a book and you have a very specific purpose, or even if you write on your own website and you want to write sales copy, it's a very different ball game. And I think for that, it might be great to have an editor who can steer you more on track, what techniques to use and how to speak on this specific situation. So I was going to ask actually into that now. Why do you think is it so important to have an editor or somebody who professionally edits your book for you?
Well, when it comes to a book, like it's accepted that you're going to need an editor. I think it's like an industry standard that editing is part of it. It's much more difficult to get people to edit things that are, you know, blogs and copy for their website, because there is a lot more tolerance, and the copy is not necessarily going to be out there forever. You can also go in and change it a lot more easily. So you've got a lot of control over the future of that publication. You still want it to be accurate, of course you do. But when it comes to something that is going to be a publication, like a book, it's really important that you get an editor on board, not only for the accuracy, but just because you really want to be making sure that the quality of the product that you're putting out there is representing all your hard work and doing your story justice. There's nothing worse than having an incredible message and putting people off by not being able to tell it in a way that's really appealing, really juicy for the audience. Like I was saying in the last question, re-engaging people. There are actually techniques to doing that. It's not about just having a story, it's about how that story unravels and using different linguistic language techniques to draw people back in. Questions are one example of that, but there are lots and lots of ways that you can re-engage your audience. And an editor can definitely do that for you. Then of course there's the accuracy piece. Like any book out there has been edited, certainly at a very minimum, for accuracy and making sure all the grammar is impeccable and the punctuation is in the right place and all those kinds of things, because you don't want the quality putting off if it's standing for you. There's also a massive element, particularly among, I think, entrepreneurs, because they're often writing a book for the first time if they're producing a product for the first time. So there's definitely an element of confidence and your editor helping you navigate the self-publishing process for the first time.
Yes.
Now, you've got heaps of people who can help you do this, and a lot of the resources are available for free on the internet somewhere, but having that person there for you, actually telling you why something, not just what changes to make, but why something would sound better a different way, why it's more readable for your readers like this, having that second set of eyes to sense check things, to make sure that you as the expert aren't assuming something that your audience doesn't know, or leaving too much out and making the audience work too hard to figure out what you're trying to say. So there's endless benefits to having an editor from that point of view, because you're usually so in your story that you don't have any perspective of how it reads from an outsider's point of view. And it's all very well having maybe a test reader read it, somebody who is in your audience reading it from a content point of view. But it's a whole other level of confidence that you gain again when you've got somebody who has read other books in a similar vein and know where all of the pitfalls are and can really, really scrutinize and test what you're putting out there to make sure that it just makes sense, reads really beautifully, flows really well, doesn't leave anything out, isn't overly simplistic but isn't overly complicated, and is always looking at it through the lens of, well, through two lenses really, keeping your voice and what does your audience get from this, or who your audience is, and how they're reading it. So I see voice and audience as two sides of the communication piece, really. You've got the sender, which is the voice aspect, like making sure it sounds really great and sounds like you, and that's by far the best compliment I ever get from my clients. Oh, this is amazing, it sounds like me, only better. And then there's there's the receiver side of things, which is the audience. So without both of those things being taken into consideration, there'll be something missing from the actual message getting to the right person. So quite often writers writing a book will, or writing any piece of copy, will focus on one aspect or the other. They'll be like really paying attention to their reader to the point where they get lost a little bit, or they'll be really determined to get their voice out there authentically, and not quite concentrating on who is picking up that message. So the two sides of the communication piece, the sending and the receiving, both have to come into play, and your editor will be able to do that for you. And that's why it's imperative to get a book edited. At the very least, I would say get your web copy edited as well, but that's because I'm a bit biased. But yeah, especially if you're going into print, it's super important to have as many sets of eyes on it in the production process before it gets out there as possible, because you know we're all humans and things can slip through.
Definitely. I love that. And it makes me feel like that I can use an editor almost as a learning tool. You know, some people might want to buy a course, right? But if you hire an editor, it's almost like you're learning on the job, and you're getting all that wealth and information from somebody who personally works on your thing. So they will teach you what you could do in this situation, or how you're perceived when you talk about this, and that sort of stuff, because you could learn all the copywriting techniques, but you still don't know how it applies to you. So if you actually get yourself an editor, that seems to me like almost like an upgrade from a copywriting course, and you get sort of a way to get your things out there without being so impersonal. You get your personal, you know, hand-holding service that way, and I think that's great. Yes, you get it.
That's really true, actually. Like, cool. Everybody writes differently. Everybody has different writing hang-ups, different writing habits, different writing issues. And something that I get asked quite often, actually, because I've written my own books, is, do I need an editor? And I'm like, hell yes, I do. Like, when I'm writing, I'm far too in it. I'm in my story. I've got as many writing habits as anybody else, and even though I know what to write, and I know what the rules are, and I know I have a very good sense of my own voice. I've usually got a pretty good sense of who my audience is, unless I'm talking to somebody completely new. But you know, I can take all of those things into consideration, and I still absolutely need an editor, because they are able to test it, like I was saying before, test it from that outsider point of view and see it in a way that you just simply can't see it. So it's absolutely crucial to have that personal one-on-one attention on your writing, because yeah, like you say, you can learn all the knowledge about how to do something, doesn't mean that you can do it.
That's true. Yeah, and I just coincidentally, I'm actually listening to the audiobook of Stephen King's On Writing. He has written a book about writing, which I find absolutely fascinating. And he says the same thing. He's like, there's different authors who have different strengths. Yeah, there might be people who have a really, yes, this one, it's so good. So there might be people with different strengths. Someone might be great at describing scenes, but they're really bad at dialogue. And he's like, this is what your author, what your editor can help you with. If you have weaknesses there, this is what they, because you can't do everything perfect. Even if you're a professional, you might have weaknesses and habits that you seem to, you know, just can't help doing. So that's what they pick up on. This is exactly that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And also, I've written a blog post on this.
Good. Okay. So
usually the better writers, the better the writer, the more they appreciate and really realize how crucial editing is. I'll put the link in with the video when we upload this, because yeah, like it's not, you don't need editing because you're a bad writer. You need editing because you are a writer, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yes. It's like buying, you know, it's like when you are a plumber, you need your tool set. An editor is almost like your tool set for a writer. So that's maybe how I would see it, as an investment in, not quite, I would say, human equipment sort of thing. That's part of your job well. So great, thank you so much for that. And I was also thinking, if you have been writing for a long time, you hit up a writer's block, or might find it hard to get what is in your head out onto the page. So I have that personally when I do visual stuff. I have maybe a really great idea, and somehow in my head it looks amazing. But then when I want to put it on paper or really make it real, it becomes like this half version, or I can't quite get it out there the way I want it to be. It's very frustrating, but I believe that exists with writing too. So I was wondering, have you got any shortcut tips that you to find out there?
Yeah, sure. So some of the techniques that we talked about when we were talking about finding your voice definitely can be used as techniques as a shortcut to writing your book. Free writing, journaling, going back into what you've already done. This is where you can dive back into things that aren't just personal messages and unedited stuff, and actually look even at what you've got that is edited and already published and out there. And I'm talking about things like emails that you might have sent, content that you've already got for any kind of e-courses, blogs, articles that you've written for other people. Now, you might not write guest articles if you're, say you do like loads of video blogs for your own site, and you like being interviewed by video, but you never write guest articles for other publications. That's okay. You can also take your existing content that is in video or audio form and get it transcribed, and that is a really great easy shortcut for creating more book content. And then you can obviously create the book by talking your book. There are actually people who have written whole books this way. And when I used to work in translation, we had translators who always audio recorded their translations of things, because usually the older guys who actually couldn't type, they would be typing like this otherwise, but they're incredible scientific translators, because I used to work in patent translation, so that was equal parts fascinating and crazy boring. But yeah, so these guys would translate, but not onto the page. They translate into a recorder, and I think that's a really quick and easy way of you getting your ideas out of your head, especially if you're a great speaker, for example. So I know, for example, lots of coaches might do speaking gigs or workshops live where they can talk so easily about what their passions are and what they love doing. So they find it really, really easy to sit down and just talk their book. And you can pretend that you're talking it out to a friend sitting over coffee from you, or to the actual person who it's eventually intended for. That's a definite easy shortcut. And then you really are nailing that conversational style as well, because we talk with a lot of verbiage and, asides and ums and ahs and all that kind of thing. So when you get it transcribed, it will have a lot of that still in. Probably not ums and ahs, but things like where you interrupt yourself and stuff like that. So it will require more editing if you put your book together that way, but it certainly is a hugely, highly recommended technique for putting it together in the first place, because you can't edit what's not there. You can't, your editor can't edit what's not there. All of the people who are helping you create this book, they can't create the stories for you. They can't create the messages for you. They can't get your ideas out of your head. That's your only job, basically, getting your ideas out of your head. Once it's on the page, then the real crafting can start, where you're really making the book happen. But the only thing that nobody can do for you is get it from here onto the page. So that's the bit that you need to focus on. And there are those techniques that you can definitely use as a shortcut. Also, I would say there's a lot to be said for fleshing out your plan. If you're a bullet point kind of person, I know I love writing lists and bullet points as a way of kind of thinking. I'm quite linear in the way I think like beginning to end, rather than in these beautiful thought clouds, or whatever you call them, like brainstorm type things, where it's just like association and association, and they get really messy and crazy. I'm an end-to-end kind of girl. So yeah, I like listing bullet points in order, and then fleshing those out, and then fleshing those out more and more. And that's another way that you can piece together your book, rather than writing start to finish, if you have real trouble getting it down in order. The last thing that I have to say really is, there is no right way to do this. I have honestly worked with people who have written a sentence a day for 3 years, all the way through the spectrum to somebody who's written 40,000 words in 3 days. So it is a spectrum. You're probably somewhere in the middle. It's absolutely possible to write a book of, well, let's say you're writing an ebook and it's around 25,000 words, which is a nice size for a short book, especially like a first product. If you're an entrepreneur doing a first small product for your business, 25,000 words is absolutely doable in 3 to 6 months. If you're going into print, and it needs to be probably quite a bit longer than that. I would say a decent sized print book starts around, well, minimum print book starts around 40,000 words. Like you do get them shorter than that in non-fiction, but for it to feel substantial, you want it to be a decent size, so upwards of 40,000. Probably like a really substantial book is going to be 50, 60 and beyond. So yeah, that's more like a 6 month to a year project, perhaps, if you're looking at something 50 to 75,000 words, that kind of length. But for a first book, I would encourage around the 25,000 mark, and that's because as well, we quite like, especially if you're writing for a business type audience or a lifestyle type audience, we quite like succinct things, and it's really a lot easier to read short, very focused, very niche books, rather than telling people absolutely everything you know on a topic and trying to cram everything into your first book. You don't have to just write one book. There's the old adage that everybody has a book in them, but I really believe everybody has several books in them, and creativity is absolutely unending, and it's not constrained to a single book or a single project. Your life's work is going to be a whole body of work, so you don't have to constrain yourself, and you can put something out there nice and manageable at first, that's really quite straightforward to put together. Again, if you're struggling to write, you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to write a massive, great big dictionary, encyclopedia kind of length book. Just keep it simple, write what you know. You're the expert. Only you can tell your story. And even though a lot of the information is already out there, nobody is able to present it in the way that you perceive it, from your angle, from your experiences, through your story. So there's definitely a place for your book. So yeah, that's what I would say about what happens when you are finding it tricky to get out there, because I know a lot of the things that also make people find it a little bit hard to put the words on the page. It's not just the practicalities, but also the stuff that's going on in their head, the mindset around people actually reading it and being visible. So those are some things to get you started, but try not to overthink it.
Okay, great. That was actually all questions I had for our interview today. But what you just said before ties quite nicely into what we wanted to do at the end of this interview, which is tell people a little bit about Happily Ever Ebook collaboration project that we have put together for people who are ready to put about 25,000 word book out there and who are in need of some design and editing support for that. So I hope you can tell us a little bit about that, because we are both of us are super excited to bring that out there, because it's a great way for especially maybe first timers also who have never had anybody help them with something like this, to get their book, version that is possible for that. So yeah, maybe you can tell them a little bit.
Yeah, I can do that, sure. So Happily Ever Ebook is a collaboration between myself and Ina. I am your words girl, and I will copy edit, proofread 25,000 words of yours completely end to end and polish it up all beautifully for it to go into the design phase. Ina will be doing all of the design around the project. So we work simultaneously, and we're covering the project management as well. So as she is designing, she's making your beautiful ebook cover and designing the layout of the interior pages for the text that I edit to go into. We collaborate and go back and forth on all of the deadlines between the two of us, so that you don't have to coordinate a whole team of designer and typesetter and editor and proofreader and all of the other bits and pieces. So you write your draft, you hand it over to us, and in a week we take it from the draft that you send us, just the words on the page, right through to a beautiful finished product that you can sell straight away. It's the PDF ebook style, so it's beautifully designed for you to sell on your website as a product. So that's what we're doing. We've worked together before in collaboration with one another. Ina's actually my designer, so we've definitely nailed the communication side of things, where we talk to one another about the vision of something and make sure that the words and the imagery is beautifully seamless and absolutely of the highest standard, both the same quality, absolutely matching and not disjointed in any way. Because like when you don't have the editor and the designer working in tandem, you have to repeat your vision obviously over and over again to different contractors. And the beauty of working with us for Happily Ever Ebook in this package, in this way, is that we infuse all of that, we like fuse all of that vision together into the one product that you get within a week, rather than this kind of scattered approach where you build your team but you're the hub, and there's lots of different spokes going off you. So we do absolutely everything for you. You are keen to find out more about that, we are live. You can go over to happilyeverebook.com and see what it's all about. So I'll just run you through what you'll find there. There's lots of information about what's included, and also our own backgrounds and expertise. There's examples of the kind of thing that you can create, and if it's the kind of thing that you want and you think that you'd like to work with us, then head on over to the Apply Now page and fill out a few details. And once you've done that, you'll receive an info pack, which is a lot more of the nitty-gritty stuff about how the process would actually work day by day, options of more examples that we've already worked on, and the kind of thing that you can create. And then we have a chat on the phone to you just to make sure that your project is absolutely a go, and that we can take it on. So that's what you'll find on the website, and that's what will happen if you go through to apply. There's also a quiz on there that you can just click on to see, is this kind of thing for me? Is this the right team for my project, for my book? And we would love you to apply and send your book through to us for us to work on together to make an absolutely beautiful project. Yeah, between the two of us, but it's a collaboration between not just Ina and I, of course, but you and your team. So we would love you to go over to Happily Ever Ebook and .com and find out all about that. So I'll put the link as well below when we post this video. Okay. Was there anything else, Ina?
Yes. No, not from my end. This sounds great. I am super excited about it, and I hope people just go there to check it out. It's just great to have a look at it anyways. Maybe it's a good idea for you to figure out, am I at the right stage for this? But you can talk to us anyway, in general, if you have any questions about ebooks or want to make something like that. So Happily Ever Ebooks might be a great start for you in the first place. So have a look. It's really easy to understand information, and you can get a great overview. Thank you for the introduction for that, Kris. So yes, from my side, we are all good here. Is there anything else you would like to talk about?
No, just all the resources will be below the video. So the website happilyeverebook.com is going live now, and will be available for you to just hop on over there. So go check it out. All right, cool. Thanks.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.